So,
Hello.
hi Steve. Hi
Other
Bernard. David. Sorry. Bring up the notes. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. So is the first. We missed the first meeting this year, and we had for the implementation working group. So but I think the discussion was again on the topic of like how to maintain our specification, generating the SDK, and so forth. I don't think there's been any update on the kind of other side of the work that this group started looking at in terms of defining kind of reference architecture for CD events. Yeah, so that's something that we need to pick up this year, I guess. You had a PR that you were working on, Steve. Oh, actually, that you published, and we had some reviews. But I think it would be good to have Ben as well um, to discuss that.
Yeah, we just need to get that wrapped up. I don't think there's going to be a lot of changes that are needed.
Okay, so I think something is wrong with.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm not sure if Andrea can hear us.
I can hear you now, Steve. I'm sorry. I
All
think I've
right.
been talking to myself or just
So,
you, but not hearing because there's something wrong with my headphones. Sorry about that.
no problem. I just was saying that that PR out there. I think there's just some minor changes that we need to do. Ben wanted to talk about it and kind of wrap it up. I was hoping he was going to be here today, but we'll just have to do that next time.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like it. Let me see if we can put it in the message. So yes, one is here. Next meeting. Okay. On the other topic, I don't know if in January it was only Ben, or anyone else joined. Is there any follow-up to that discussion or anything you guys have been working on that you would like to share in terms of?
The only thing was, it looked like Ben basically identified two different paths. One was, I'm trying to remember exactly the, let me look. So one was using the Open API to basically help model some stuff, and then the other one was the actual generation of the SDKs. And I can't remember what the second one was. I think that was somebody else was working on that implementation and did a kind of like a proof of concept of what needed to be changed. But it sounded like Ben identified two different paths that can happen simultaneously. So we just need to follow up on that. Oh, it was the pickle stuff. So one was the pickle, and the other one was the Open API.
To be maybe more precise, because Ben sent me a message.
Oh, good.
On the target on the what Ben shown us about pickle is to use pickle as a meta description to generate what we have today. I mean the set of JSON schema, maybe some samples. So it's the path on which Ben is working. And the other path is the path I'm working on, is not to use pickle to generate some stuff, but to use OpenAPI or another modeling language. Currently, I'm exploring async API. Async API is, for the schema part, is use a variant of JSON draft 0.7, and to use the toolset of OpenAPI or async API to generate SDK, documentation, and maybe extra. So to have both approaches, to have one source of truth to generate the rest, but the main difference is what is the start. With Pickle is we create our own language to generate the JSON API, and we keep the rest, and we don't touch on how to generate the SDK. It's not part. And the other one is to use an existing toolchain, to use an existing toolchain to generate SDK or part of the SDK or documentation. So as I mentioned in one of my Slack message, with currently I'm exploring async API. It's what is interesting with async API is the ecosystem is not as big as the Open API, but is more focused also. It means that they provide a default tool set. It's not everyone that try to create. So it's more focused.
And you have-
the community size is smallest, but more interesting. Yes, Steve?
which one are you having better luck with? The async or the open API?
Both.
Both.
In fact, I already on one of my repo, I already explore also as open API.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
And I use it with three tools: Open API Generator with a fork of Swagger 2, and a small tools that are more echo to me. But I have some issue because it's hard to customize generator, etc., to try to achieve what I want. And someone in the peer mentioned the Async API toolset. So I spend more time on it. It was part of what I would like to explore. And what is interesting with toolset of Async API is it is JavaScript only. So you have only to know JavaScript. For the other approach, you have to know Java and the templating language. In the case of Async APIs, they try to say only JavaScript, but with only JavaScript, I'm less efficient in JavaScript than with a type language, because it's a lot of try API exploration. Something exists at some point, but not at other points. So it's a bit more difficult, but there are a lot of samples. I was already able to generate Rust and some basic stuff last week, 2 weeks ago, when I suspend my investigation. I working on generating Markdown, but one of the big difference is why we have to create custom stuff is for Async API or Open API, we just want to generate the schema part, the model part. Often those tools focus on generating the HTTP, the Kafka client, etc., all these parts. So it's something that when we don't have this part, we have to customize etc. So there are some constraints to use them. I try to identify, etc. It's part of the same repo that was linked. I don't remember. I publish all the code is online on one of my GitHub repository. So yes, it's just a question of time, but as I'm previously said, the focus is to have one schema and not a galaxy of schema as we have today, of one schema as input that able to handle every schema, every event. So.
Right. And Ben and I kind of discussed that, is that we may need because the new schema won't map 100%, that there'll be some slight differences.
Yes.
That there would be an interim message translator or something like that, and then mark those pieces that in the old schema that aren't there, like go through a deprecated route. So we would support this interim message translator for a period of some time, and then eventually move away from that, so we don't have and deprecate those pieces of the event schema, and then we'll be able to finally have like you said, one schema going forward that everything would be derived from. That's what kind of the idea that we were thinking.
Yes. On this part, the translator, the schema, evolution, etc. So some things that will not be possible as is today. By example, in the Rust SDK, I implemented the support of multiple versions. It's part of the SDK. For the if we go with this with those tools are not made to manage several versions of SDK. I talk also about the future, maybe some evolution. So yes, we will probably have to have a tools to help the translation. The tools, the personal tools I'm working on, not part of the CDF events. I'm working on another tools, and those tools will rely a lot on CDF events. So those change in schema will break some stuff. So I already look at how to internally have some kind of translation rules to update the content, the data, the stored data, etc. My case, I will not work on this month, but I will start. My case, I will use a language named Vector Remap language. It's a language created by Datadog. It's an open source language created by Datadogs to make some transformation in data structure. I made a small benchmark for
Nice.
my case.
Yeah.
So maybe I will be able to show some. When I did some modification for my exploration, I keep in mind I try to list every small modification regarding the existing stuff to be able to create this conversion tools.
Right.
Maybe.
But that
and also to explain.
Yeah, but that was the idea that we had, was to do this interim and then and be able to support the existing schema and the new schema. The new single schema is what I'd like to, and then just after a period of releases, be able to mark the existing schema, parts of it as deprecated, and then go ahead and have a roadmap to move obsolete those deprecated parts. I think we should think about that plan, because I think in the long run, having a single schema to work from as the source of truth will be a lot easier for us to deal with down the road.
Yes. Today, I'm not sure if it will be possible due to some breaking change. To have a coexistence to support those for some.
Yeah, and that would be the other route, is we just go ahead and do a breaking change, and
yes,
I could go either way.
When we discussed this topic, you told me go for breaking change, so I was more free, and I didn't keep it as an obligation to be backward compatible. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. How about you, Andrea? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess it depends how breaking the change is.
Yeah, how much work's involved?
Yeah, because to be honest, I don't have a feeling how this would look like. So I mean, I can imagine having like a single JSON schema or some other schema to describe all the events that we have today. So I guess in terms of versioning, it's not clear to me what that would mean. So if we could still have like independent version for events, or if we would like go down to a single version for all the events. and what the impact of that would be.
Today, it will be a single, as I already mentioned it, but it will be one single version from all events. It will be the spec version 0.6, 0.7, etc., and not one version per event. It's one of the biggest change to be able to manage, simply because today one of the advantage of this biggest schema, or to have multiple schemas that share parts, it's one of the other approach, is that when you modify a shared part, how ID are defined, how links are defined, in reality, every events are modified indirectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we still have this issue today. If you change the link definition, it means that we have to upgrade the version number probably on every message, and it's not intuitive. It's not what we think at first when we saw the structure. What one of the purpose of the picker approach, a common point between the picker approach and we will say the XAPI tool chain is to try to share maximum how an ID is defined, how context is defined, what is a subject, a predicate, etc. What is a URL, a URI, and to always use the same definition without copy-paste 5 lines, but just maybe one reference. Like if we are using a type in a programming language. So it's an important point because as we mentioned, it's not a simply breaking change in the structure, it's also in the philosophy of CD Events. When we read the primer and everything, having different version is part of the original purpose. It's possible to keep it and to not have, but to still try to have different stuff, but maybe in this case, it's better to not try to rely on existing tool chain like OpenAPI or Sync API or differently, because it means we will have to have one tool that will be run in loop over every schema. Those tools are not made to manage several schemas. They are made to have one schema and generate one SDK for one schema, and not one SDK for multiple schema. It's also why we create our custom SDK today. And it's one of the other advantage of the one schema is for a server or for consumer or for queue, as we have to discuss. We just say, I have one queue or one endpoint that will be able to receive any kind of events and to validate it against the schema or against one SDK. And I don't have to first read the message, try to find the schema reference or the ID of the kind of the, how we name it, the type, as I rename the field, the type of from the context, and then say, oh, it is this type, so I have to use this schema to read it or to validate it. One of the goals was also to be able to remove this custom stuff. The working with multiple schema implies those custom stuff on SDK, on consumer, on server. It has
Now,
some advantage.
now,
Yes.
if you need to add, let's say we want to add a new either a new event, or if we want to add a new field to the schema, so it's not going to be a breaking change. It's going to be just adding stuff. How's that handled? Is that just going to be I would imagine that's pretty seamless then.
Yes, for adding is always backward compatible. So adding a new event is just it's depend on how we will do it. I take a lot of library freedom to my current exploration, but today, by examples, I made a clear difference between subject and predicate. So I have to, if I want to create just a new predicate for an existing subject, I have to modify the subject and add into the list of predicates the new predicate and the type of this predicate, and declare the type of this predicate. So for the approach will be that. For pickle, I think it will be something similar, and we will ask then regenerate the SDK, the documentation, or the JSON schema in case of the pickle approach.
But something like
the version number, as we will change the version number, it means that we have a single version number. So the version number of the specification.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. In my mind, that's easier to keep track of it instead of having every event have its own version. That seems like it could get out of hand pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think we experienced that from a maintainer point of view and tooling point of view. That adds a lot of complexity. I mean, my concern for behind that decision at the time still exists, but I guess that is that. I mean, we have events that are kind of very separated in a way from each other. That, I don't know, SCM events or environment events might be dealt with by very different tools, and so if we make changes to one and then it has an impact on the version, and that might, have repercussion on the other one. But as long as we do like changes that add things, we can use semantic versioning, saying these are minor versions. So it means that an SDK that is able to parse certain messages will be still able to parse newer messages. It will only miss certain things. It might be harder to discover whether a certain new version is relevant for certain areas of the protocol. But I mean, once we have like nice tooling for automating everything, we can probably compensate for that through kind of documentation, nice release notes, or those kind of things.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as well. Because, like you said, I think we'll have a little hurdle to get over, but I think in the long run it'll be easier, and we can compensate in, like you said, in the documentation and release notes and stuff like that.
All right. I'm really glad that, anyways, that this work is really focusing on making like the maintenance more sustainable. So I think that's really important for this community.
Oh
So
yeah, the easier we can make it easier to maintain, I think it'll be easier for us to have people involved and being able to make change, contribute.
yeah.
I got to drop for another meeting, guys. Sorry about that. But this sounds like we have kind of a direction. I think we should loop back Ben back in when he hopefully next time.
Yeah.
So thanks. I got to run.
Good to see you, Steve.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Talk to you
Bye.
later. Bye. Yeah, anything else we need to chat about? Thanks for all the updates and discussion.
No, it's one topic that was more related to for the meeting of the specification. My previous Slack message, I talk about the IDs, and Ben react to this message. So it's informal. It's why it's on Slack, and I didn't start a PR or open an issue. But it's related to, sorry, to how we for some fields like ID, what we want to say is this field is required and not empty. So to translate the not empty to the specification, often how it was translated is min length 1.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
this min length 1 is it's a false friend in my opinion. It generates issue to handle on the generator because a lot of generator doesn't handle well the min length and the max length. They just say it's a string and whatever. So we could create our own types. I guess it's how it's done on Java, maybe on Rust. At least I create a non-empty string type. But for me, it's a false, the wrong way to say we don't want something empty. My question is why we don't want something empty. Empty string is the default value for a string, like 0 is the default value for an int. And saying min length 1 doesn't prevent the user to use a hard-coded value like a or 0 or a one char value. So I don't understand how it's a good protection on why we say why empty is not a valid value. In some point, it's not a valid value or should not be supported. It's one of the things I would like to start because we also did it for URI external.
I think it was, I mean, I totally agree. It's not like perfect representation. It was more to give an indication. I guess it's maybe similar in a way to kind of the enum with an extra value. So where the language kind of didn't allow us to really express what we wanted to express, we kind of used an approximation. And like something with a min length of 1 doesn't exactly means semantically what we meant, but it was an approximation to kind of express that, if it makes sense. But I mean, there are probably better ways to achieve that. Like you said, like defining your own type, non-empty string. In terms of, I mean, in terms of why something should not be empty, I guess it depends on a case by case.
It's exactly what I would like to say. It's if we define the maybe a format or something, it could be more enforced. Example for URL for artifact URLs. So we say it's a package URL should follow the package URL format. So
Yeah.
we could also provide maybe a pattern or have a real implementation of this type. But for ID, it's more freedom because it depends on the backend system. On some of my system, I use UID v4, some other UID v7, maybe CID.
Yes.
Currently, I use CID. But, so we don't want to, but having a default empty is as good for me and maybe better than to say the default value is empty. It means no ID, so it implies that it's the responsibility of maybe the consumer to generate an ID or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the tool won't be able to validate if an ID is a good ID or not. that I totally agree. I guess that is meant more that part is on something that only a human can do. To know if it's a good ID, it's part of the design, how you design your system to provide that ID. But like it is not does not mean the same, but at least I mean the thing that you can check automatically is that is not empty. I mean that could be caused by some whatever integration issue in your code so that the IDs are not passed through, and then it
But,
turns out empty, and then you can detect, okay, well, this is an empty ID, so it's not it's not
including
valid.
a non-empty ID could be an invalid ID. If I because we say non-empty but non-blank. So if we send just a space or an emoji or whatever.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I understand that, but that has to be more intentional, if you know what I mean. So if I'm sending an emoji, it's because I'm sending an emoji. I mean, it's but if I'm like not sending it by mistake, then I can at least detect that. But then I mean, I totally agree. It's not like a check of all the condition. It's just one of the condition. I mean, a valid ID should not be empty, but it should also be a valid ID that is something else, that is something more than not being empty. But there's no way that in the language or in any language that we can say what a
Yes,
valid
but
ID
as we
should look
mentioned,
like.
it's different. You mentioned I don't send an ID, but in this case, I set the ID because we say it's a required field.
Yeah.
We just say, so not setting the ID is setting, it's to set undefined or null integer. But setting with an empty string is we explicitly set the value. It's the empty string. So it's as valid as the emoji string, an emoji scar or anything. The other approach could be also to define a default, to have some kind of default value for people that don't know what to put.
But the default value, but I don't think we should have a default value, because if we the goal is not to make the event pass validation. The goal is to kind of indicate the event producer what they should do from my perspective. So if we do provide a default value, then people is not setting the ID, then validation will pass, but it will actually not be a good event, because the ID is always the same, and so that's not really useful.
But what I mean is we could have some default value, empty string or a chain of 0 with a meaning, say it's not valid for open telemetry. Class context, they use some kind of default value. It's a chain of 0, for example.
Okay.
Position. And inside SDK library, there is a special treatment. When we see this, we know that it's an internal ID but it's not propagated, by example. There are some
I see.
rules.
Okay.
So we are able to create something, but there is special behavior. So it could be it's not translated in part as part of the specification, but on type, where it means that people are able to create valid structure and just set the ID at the end, or but not at the build time, or when they export the event, etc., etc. So there are a lot of use cases so to this. But in my case, is more regarding by the SDK. It's the non-empty string. It's with all the generator I saw. It's not check, or it's done when we serialize or deserialize. The check is done at this time, but not in the memory model, by example. By default,
Yeah.
SDK just say it's a string and basta. So
Okay.
I would like to think we could have we could try to put all the all requirement, etc. But if those requirements are not implemented in the SDK, or if we have no way to validate that it is implemented, it could generate more trouble for the user at the end of the SDK, or when they implement them their own, or it generates a lot of useless complexity. It could also generate non-use complexity. Just
Yeah.
it's one of the points I would like just to raise.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree and understand the fact that, I mean, you want to maybe set the ID later, so you want to check that, like, if you're, I mean, you might still want to be able to, like, deserialize the message and then check, well, is it a valid message, and then you can decide based on rules that you can have in the code. But you may still want to be able, to like create your objects and serialize them or deserialize them, regardless of the fact that they have or not have the ID set, for instance. Is that what you meant? One of the things that
Yes, or when we work in the memory, being able to we have to set any value.
Yeah,
because
that
with
makes
the
total
at least
sense.
with the min length one, I will be to be honest, it's what I did in some of my first sets. I hardcode a zero a non-empty string, but it was fully hard-coded, and I sent a bunch of message with the same ID 0. So it's sometimes when we create security, we also push people to create workarounds that are worse than what we want to. I will have to go also.
Yeah, that's all right. But thanks for just thinking. So is there a place where we can track this discussion? Is there? You said it was a conversation on Slack. Maybe you would like to file an issue so we can keep track of
maybe this week or next week. I will open an issue if you think it's if it could be interesting to discuss this point. It was just an idea when I work on the SDK level, something, but yes, okay. Sure. I will open an issue maybe next week after next.
Sounds good.
We could continue the discussion offline.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, David, and yeah, have a good rest of your day. Good to see you then.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.